I don't know if it's necessarily propaganda, but we are kind of trained that like nothing beats the U.S. The U.S. is number one. Everyone else wants to be like the U.S.
I did grow up with a Christian background, and we tend to be very patriotic and Christian nationalism and shit. And I'm beginning to be like, were we brainwashed?
We are also talking about the summit in Alaska between Trump and Putin. Putin.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another episode of the Doom Scroll podcast. I am Cody. I am here with Calvin. If you are brand new, welcome. And so this week, Calvin, do you want to go over what we'll be covering for the episode?
Sure. We will be talking about how Texas is breaking some laws to try and rig future elections in their favor. We've got, let's see, what else are we talking about? We are also talking about the summit in Alaska between Trump and Putin. Putin. We'll be talking about some of the never-ending horrors that are happening in Gaza right now. We have some Epstein updates, and we will be closing it out with what we are watching this week.
Yeah, sounds great. Never a
sounds
dull
like
moment.
Sounds like a fun time.
Yeah, it's a fun time in the U.S. and elsewhere currently. I don't know about you, but I feel like I've never looked into. I feel like, okay, tell me if it was maybe just me, because I did grow up with a Christian background, and we tend to be very patriotic and Christian nationalism and shit, and you're taught not to question anything really, like God especially, but also you're kind of taught to feel grateful for your country, and like you were born in the greatest country on earth, and you shouldn't really ever talk bad about your country and everything because people have a lot worse. And I'm beginning to be like, were we brainwashed? Because I've never looked outside of my own country, more than currently, just to be like, what are other people's quality of life like outside of this country? And just observing and thinking about what that might be like, especially in those countries with free healthcare.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely jealous of the countries that have free healthcare, definitely, but countries that prioritize 30-hour weeks for working because they want to have a healthy work and life balance for their citizens. I don't know. I think I've said it before. If money wasn't a factor, if family and friends weren't a factor, the logistics just weren't a factor, if I could just pick up and leave today, I would. But it's definitely a much harder situation for us. But when it comes to brainwashing, my family wasn't religious. I would say my family probably falls like in the middle. My wife's family was definitely very like atheist and kind of hippie-ish, and my wife grew up going to protests as a I wouldn't say as a kid, but as a teenager was going to protests and stuff. I was raised with like you trust the police, you trust the government, and my family was definitely liberal and they were Democrats. So even when like Bush was president, like my grandma and my mom would be like, well, fuck this guy, he's an idiot, he's stupid, but it was still you trust your government, and you follow the laws and you do the right thing. So there was definitely that sense. I do think after 9/11 there was a huge increase of patriotism, whether or not that's a conspiracy and that was that was created to cause that. We could get into that in another episode, but I definitely was in that middle. And it's hard, probably the same for you. It's hard, I would imagine for you getting out of that religious aspect. It was hard now in my 30s, having to realize that like, you can't trust police, or you can't always trust police. You can't always trust the people who are in charge. And that's definitely hard because that's something that I always kind of had internally in me. Like, at least, if something happens, I know like I can call the police and things are going to be fine. And then you see how people are mistreated and, so yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of my
Yeah.
take.
Same. Like my dad was a police officer. He's a Los Angeles County Sheriff for 25 years. So we were definitely taught to trust police, and I trusted because basically I just kind of saw all cops like my dad. So I was like, yeah, they're gonna help out. They're gonna be good and save me. If I'm in trouble, they're the good guys. We'd watch cops all the time, and just essentially like these idiots, and just like play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And although that's not completely untrue, there's definitely, with the internet, we see videos more. We see body cam footage now. There's cameras everywhere, so we can see more of what actually goes on behind the scenes. And it sows mistrust, but it also shows you the reality that, just like with any other career, there's going to be people who suck at their jobs or are just bad seeds in general that are on power trips. So unfortunately, I feel like police academies and stuff attract the people who need power trips, and that's the scary part. So
yeah, same with military. It attracts people who, exactly, have those power trips, or have, I wouldn't, maybe not full aggression issues, but are definitely on that tipping point. Because I don't know how like the academy or the military weeds people out. But I do think that there are definitely, I don't want to say that all cops are bad. I know that there is there is the thinking out there that just all cops are bad cops, and I don't believe that. I do believe that there are good cops out there. I've met a couple people who are cops that I think are good people. They're good, family people. They're respectful. Of course, you don't know everyone, 100%. So if something happened, whatever. But
yeah,
I do think, again, it attracts people who have that, authoritative or, whatever type of personality. And then also it's a hard job. You're dealing with seeing, people committing crimes. You're dealing with seeing, dead people all the time being murdered in horrific ways, or children being killed, people dying of drugs. You are dealing with so much trauma all the time that even the best intentioned people, it can break them down and tear them down and cause them to be not the same as they go in. There's definitely, as with people, there's a spectrum in the police force, or there's a spectrum in the military. You have the people who go in for bad intentions, and you have people that go in and start with good intentions, and then you have people that go in and just, it eats them away. They don't get the proper, therapy. They don't deal with things. They hold it in, and they take it out on people, and, shit happens. And also, like, we only see the negative aspects too. Like, you don't see the body cam of, a police officer doing a good deed, on TikTok. You see them, harassing someone or taking advantage of someone. So I do think that there's good cops out there. We just don't see them, but there's definitely a lot of bad cops out there, unfortunately. And there's also, with bad cops, there are people who let that stuff go and don't stand up for it. It is, kind of like a mafia mentality. You don't tell on your own, type of thing. So there are people who get away with doing not good things because, whatever.
Yeah, for sure. It's complicated because it's like we need someone to enforce rules because, people are nutty. But there's that fine line of cops like overstepping and abusing their power, and same with presidents, obviously. So
and politicians.
Yeah, and definitely seeing that occur now, which we are going to dive into. But I just so happened to check which countries top the charts for like the best quality of life. That is the gauge that I was wanting to go off of. Do you want to hear the list and where the U.S.
We're not going to be falling pretty high, so
so happiness-based rankings, World Happiness Report 2025. So Finland takes the crown again, 8 years running. So it's no fluke. Trust, equality, and optimism anchor that number one spot. So close behind, we have Denmark, Iceland, Sweden, Netherlands, Norway, Israel, Luxembourg, Mexico, and Costa Rica make appearances in the top 10. It would be, it's a little strange considering we have people trying to cross the border from Mexico, so I don't understand that one. But that was for the happiness, for quality of life. We have Luxembourg leads with a score of 218.2. I didn't know we did scores in this shit. Followed by the Netherlands and Denmark. Interestingly, and also sneaks into the top 4. I don't even, where is that? Hello, welcome to my ignorance. All right, so
That should be the name of this episode.
Welcome to our ignorance. Composite quality of life reports, U.S. News and global rankings. U.S. News puts Denmark at number 1, followed by Sweden and Switzerland. A broader global citizens report highlights Switzerland, Norway, Denmark. So it's and Australia stand out. So we see a lot of in a lot of these we see Denmark. So it's looking like Denmark's really winning out here, but also we have Sweden that is also up there along with Switzerland and Norway. When it comes to standard of living and human development, we have Norway, Denmark, Finland, Switzerland, and Netherlands. Those are the top tiers. The Human Development Index. So we got Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, Denmark, Sweden, Germany, Netherlands, and broader flourishing. So we've got some surprise winners here. So this is surrounding relationships and mental health. So it's prioritizing mental health over economic wealth. So keep that in mind. So we have Indonesia, Israel, Philippines, Mexico, and Poland that rank near the top. On the flip side of that, the US and the UK struggle. So bottom line, best all-around picks for quality of life. The Nordics take the cake. So Finland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Iceland are the top. As far as where the US ranks, let me figure that out, because it was like, we know we're not ranking the US. Little search in here, where's the US fall? The United States ranks 24th in the 2025 World Happiness Report, making it its lowest position ever in the history of the reports. We're filling that for sure.
Wow. Yep.
So it's interesting that, like, no president or anyone in, government looks at these things. It's all about economic growth. That is it. Mental health doesn't fucking matter. It's about who's the richest and most powerful. And you almost wonder, like, how different would our country be if they prioritize their people's happiness and quality of life over money? Well, I guess we would be up there with Denmark and Finland and shit. But America.
Fuck yeah.
Money that would, and the people here, it's like, oh, we're like the richest nation. Like, cool, but like the people aren't rich. We're struggling, it's getting harder because, prices keep going up and, pay doesn't match it to go up with it. So struggle. So I get, of course we're ranked 25th, unfortunately. So
yeah,
little fun fact for everyone that you didn't ask for.
Everyone's depressed now.
Not that I think already.
Yeah. Norway's kind of been my top choice when I started looking into where we would go if we had to go somewhere. Obviously, Canada is the easiest, or Mexico, but I don't speak Spanish. My wife does. I've also just heard a lot of horror stories about Mexico, which could be true or not true, but I think I would be have too much anxiety, walking down the street.
Yeah.
Canada would be nice, but they're also just as expensive, if not more expensive. Norway, I think, is, if I had the choice of anywhere, it's beautiful. I think they also have low work weeks. A lot of the areas are you walk to work. It's a beautiful place, so I probably would go there. What about you?
No. I mean, the most doable for me would be the UK, because my dad was born there, so that would be the easiest if we absolutely needed an emergency escape. But looking on here, unfortunately, it says the UK placed 23rd, so they're actually not far behind the US, which is not encouraging. So they're just above the US as far as the World Happiness Report goes. But I feel like just that, just knowing that their medical care alone is free, that's worth something. But they do kind of mirror the U.S. But they're highly influenced by the U.S. So that's when it does get a little bit tricky if you think like, oh, I'm gonna move to the U.K. to escape, and then you got to wonder. But they tend to follow suit with what the U.S. is doing, vice versa. But I think at least they have universal health care. Of course, no system is perfect, and people are saying, the NIH, the waits are super long and it's ridiculous and it's crazy. But at least that if you get in a horrible accident, that you're not going to go bankrupt. That emergency stuff, obviously, they have great hospitals in England, and I think even that alone would be worth it. That's interesting that they're not much higher than us.
Yeah, it's kind of scary to hear, because I definitely had higher hopes for the UK, but that does make sense. I know that there's a little more political movement against trans people right now. I know like J.K. Rowling has been like spearheading a lot of anti-trans stuff. I also know like they are very similar when it comes to like their citizens, like their workhorses, right? They're gonna do the same type of hours or whatever. They're going to prioritize outputs versus, personal health and stuff like that. What they do have for them going, though, is that, again, free, like you said, free healthcare. They are a lot more vigilant with their food. So there's, less, whatever you call it, like, dyes and stuff that can cause health problems down the road. But yeah,
probably because the government's like, we pay for your healthcare, so we gotta like.
Yeah, exactly. I would gladly take that over being able to eat Cheetos.
100%.
I think Norway is still my number one, but if I had to leave, you kind of would take anything, and I think the UK is also a really cool place to live. I've always wanted to go. And visit, so I think that's definitely a cool spot to go to.
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't know if I 100% believe the ranking, just because it probably depends what area you're in as well. Des has some friends in Scotland, and they moved from the US, and they just absolutely love it and say that they're so much happier. It's a slower pace of life. There isn't that hustle culture constantly breathing down your neck.
Yeah,
cost of housing and just cost of living in general is better, and they have great doctors. They've not had a problem with the medical system. So it might just depend. I think obviously London is a very big city, and that's probably most similar to cities like New York or San Francisco, where there's always going to be more crime, more issues and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, Scotland seems like it might potentially be at least slower paced.
Yeah, I actually have an uncle who him and his wife and child moved there, and they love it. So yeah, it's great. Awesome. And I would be happy to move and have a little sheep farm, and just stand on the hill, with my little sheep staff thing and a dog, and just watching sheep do what sheep do, and
just counting sheep.
Yeah, exactly.
Des and I were laughing as morning, which we're thinking about, when you think of Scotland, you just think of sheep and like sheepdogs. And then we were thinking about taking our little chihuahua over there and then being like, what the fuck is that? Be like having a roundup sheep or whatever, like this little chihuahua.
You would have to get a sheepdog and then make a saddle for Toby to sit on the sheepdog.
Man, for real. But it's funny, our view of other countries or how other people live are probably so blatantly skewed. Because, people think that us, because we are in the U.S., or even if we live in California, that we're surrounded by movie stars. We're on the beach, just, a walk away. Everyone is just, knows famous people and stuff like that. And so I can imagine our view and perspective of things is distorted, just like everyone else's.
Well, and also, we are, I don't know if it's necessarily propaganda, but we are kind of trained that like nothing beats the US. The US is number one. Yep. Everyone else wants to be like the US. And I see so many videos on TikTok of people who have left to different countries, and they're like, my life is so much better. Like 100% better, would never go back. So it definitely makes you think about, like, is that real? Or are we just in our own little bubble? that we haven't pushed and experienced other things that could be better for us, and because we're not pushing for that same experience, we just kind of stay stagnant in the state that we are.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been thinking about that a lot, which is why I've kind of just been researching how other countries function or what it's like to live in other countries. Because there's definitely this feeling of, holy shit, we've been fed propaganda. I feel like not as strongly, obviously, as North Korea, but I were like, well, maybe we're just not aware. I mean, obviously, we're allowed to leave and travel, so it's different. And we are pretty connected. They're not just cutting off our communications with other countries and stuff. But even what was eye-opening, if you remember when TikTok was banned and people were getting on the Chinese version, basically, of TikTok and communicating with people in China. And we realized we were being fed propaganda about China because when people were able to communicate directly to people living there, we were going back and forth. Like both countries had distorted views of how things went. And, basically people were finding out, oh, people in China do have freedom and their way of life is much different than we thought, and they are actually happy. It's not this like communist, shithole that the U.S. tells us it is. And and then I forget what they thought life was like over here, but I think they were surprised to hear how expensive it was.
Yeah.
And how, they think we're all rich over here. That was the biggest rumor, that we have so much money and we can just buy anything. And then they were so surprised to hear people working like 80 hours a week and not even being able to afford rent and stuff. So I feel like every country does it to a certain extent, but it's very eye-opening because I feel like we are taught from a young age that we live in the best country in the world. And it's all great. And maybe it was at some point, but it certainly is not anymore. And more people are waking up to that, especially this year.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever watched, 90 Day Fiance, but there's a lot of couples where the partner comes from another country, and, there's that whole, like, they think that life is amazing, life is going to be amazing here. And, like you said, Americans are rich. And a lot of things I've seen is like, there'll be one where like, well, you have a house, you must have so much money, you have a car, and you get here and it's like, well, yeah, you might have a house, but you have a mortgage on that house, you have a loan on that house, you don't own that house. Right. So you're working to pay that house every single day, and it goes up and up, and, like you said, working 80 hours, sometimes more than that, to be able to feed a family. So we definitely don't have, the best life. If you look back at like what is it, like the boomers, or the people who were our age in like the 60s and 70s, and like a brand new car cost $3,000, $5,000. I just went to look at a new car this weekend, or a used car this weekend, and it was like $38,000. I'm like, the fact that things have skyrocketed so much, since then. And to be fair, our minimum wage has gone up. We don't make, 25 cents an hour, so that's definitely a difference. But it doesn't equate out. And I've seen videos where people have done the math where like, a person's average yearly wage was enough to just buy a house, like outright. And ours is like, someone's like 10 years of a wage can buy them a house, So it's definitely a big discrepancy from back then. And, you hear older people talking about like, well, it's so easy. I bought my house at, 21. I had a new car. I worked hard. And it's like, yeah, well, you worked hard in a better timeline. We worked hard and we can barely pay rent on a home. We have a car that doesn't work, or, we're struggling to buy groceries. And so, yeah, it's definitely hard. But I would love for there to be more of an opportunity, which I know there is. You can get visas and stuff, but to be able to experience different countries and see really how people live, because you do realize I kind of want to blame TikTok for this, because you didn't really see other people's point of views except from movies, which is definitely scripted, but being able to see people living like happy lives and not working 40, 80 hours a week. People like, you see people in Italy who don't start work until like noon or something like that, and they go and they walk down to the cafe, and they, like they just have good, happy lives compared to, what we see here, where it feels like you work till you're dead. That's all you do, and then you're able to have a little bit of fun in between, but you're basically just working to survive.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just the cost of living continues to climb. So I did some chat GPTing, and it says that the current U.S. federal minimum wage is currently at $7.25 an hour. So it says would buy roughly this much in 1960s money. So 1960 is about equivalent to 67 cents an hour. 1965, 71 cents. 1968, 78 cents. 1969, 83 cents an hour. So, yeah, pretty shitty. Doing some more little, let's figure out. But other than like the wages, still just not, so it says, 1968 federal minimum wage was $1.60 an hour. Adjusted for inflation, that equals to about $14.78 in today's dollars. But we make the federal minimum wage is half of what it should be, essentially. Yeah. So it just shows why people can't get ahead. And obviously in California, the minimum wage is much higher now, but that's because our cost of living is much higher. So it's all relative, but it's just insane. And then, of course, our generation is shit on, being like, oh, you can't even, get your shit together, buy a house, a bunch of slackers, a bunch of entitled assholes. And it's just like, nah. One, it's harder to everything costs more, including college. Our generation was encouraged to like go to college, and so we have the most debt because of the student loans, and that's fucking bullshit. But also the jobs that people got after college, if they could find one, it didn't pay enough to even help afford to live, also not to pay off loans, afford a car, all the things that I feel like in the 60s or 50s or whatever, a family could live off of one person's full-time wage, buy a house, have some kids while the mom stayed at home. And now if you don't have a 2-income household, you're fucked, like just fucked.
Yeah.
So, it's like women can't even stay home with kids if they decide these days, unless, their husband is like, super rich and came maybe from a wealthier family, and there's some generational wealth in there as well. And also, I've heard my parents talk about them getting jobs straight out of high school. Like there was placement for them. Like my mom got a job straight out of high school at the sheriff's department as a secretary, and that would not ever happen these days. Can you imagine a high schooler being placed in a job at the sheriff's department, making enough to get an apartment or, have a roommate at least at 17, 18, and just starting your life from there? Like that is absolutely unheard of. And now, we've got boomers or whatever generations, talking shit about people working at McDonald's and being like, well, what do you expect? Those are entry-level jobs and they're meant for teenagers, not for adults and stuff. But it's just like, you should still be able to make a living wage, because some people can't afford to go to college and get an education. And the options are just so small that it's infuriating. But yeah, we got off on a whole different topic than we were, but it's not a bad one. It's just we went down a whole new road.
Yep. But no, I agree. Like I feel like, I see a lot of videos right now of Gen Zers basically like being pissed off at millennials because their futures are fucked. And I'm like, it's not millennials. We've been fucked over as well. It's, it's unfortunately it's that even older generation. It's the boomers. It's, whatever, that have kind of like, I've seen it before. I just don't remember what exactly it was, but it's like, laws or policies that was enacted back then just kind of trickled down, and it affected us down the line, whereas like they kind of got away with it. So
yeah, Yep. So yeah, now that we're, went off on that tangent, we'll probably have to skip some of the topics, but I think that was an important thing to address, whether we meant to or not. I know a lot of people are feeling the tension and the financial squeeze that just doesn't seem to ever let up. And that alone, I feel like, is what is making me look into, is it like that everywhere? Are all
Mm-hmm.
countries struggling like this? And the answer is no. Every country has their downfalls. The grass is, not always greener, but, you know, sometimes it is. Sometimes there's at least greener patches
Yeah.
amongst not so green patches. So, um, fortunately, we're just in a time that the U.S. is falling from grace a bit, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, so should we talk about the Texas redistricting battle that is going on?
Yeah, I believe we touched on it a little bit last week, but if you didn't watch the last episode, it was Texas Republicans had pushed through some mid-decade redistricting. Usually this happens every 10 years. They're pushing for it halfway through, which that shouldn't happen. But also from what I've seen, or at least what Democrats are saying, is that the Democrats that were involved in the committee for this redistricting plan, they weren't shown map sites. There was conveniently never a map until the very end, and all of a sudden a map was risen. So basically, it was redistrict. It would lose. They would lose 5 Democratic seats in gain Republican seats. And to break quorum and not let this go through, 50 Democrats fled the state. Governor Abbott then threatened to put out civil warrants for them, threatened for them to be arrested. I believe now the FBI is involved and is now looking for these Democrats. It's pretty ridiculous. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's, it's definitely bordering illegal. I don't know what the exact, law would be. Obviously this would have to go to the Supreme Court, which is kind of stacked against us. So, but when it comes down to it, I would feel the same way if this was a Democrat led thing. I know that, we have Governor Newsom and a couple other states. I believe New York is one, and I can't remember what the other one is, talking about doing the same thing if this goes through, just to try and even the field. I feel like that's a little bit different, but if this was originally a Democrat led thing where they were just trying to redistrict to, remove Republicans out and put Democrats in, I would also think that's wrong, because when it comes down to it, it should be the voice of the people. It shouldn't be a manipulation of the people and districting to make your side win. It should be purely what the people want. So, yeah, I think this is just absolutely ridiculous. What do you think, Cody?
Yeah, they are framing it as, something it's not. I feel like they're trying to justify it with false reasonings. I think Trump knows that they're fucked for midterms and he's panicking. And this is their reaction to it, trying to just redistrict so they can get more seats in Congress. And that's bullshit, because when has this ever happened previously? Is it legal? I think yes, technically, but it's not good. And it essentially just triggered this, gerrymander war where now, like you mentioned, we've got California and Newsom saying we'll do the same thing if Texas does that. So it's essentially starting to become a civil war
Yeah.
with Congress seats. So we've got the blue states, being like, yeah, we'll redistrict too, bitch, like,
Yeah.
and it just divides us further as
Mhm.
a country, most definitely. And instead of just like taking the L because it's deserved or letting the people vote, Trump's still trying to manipulate his power and the
Mhm.
Republicans' power. I guess we could say MAGA. I'm not going to loop all Republicans in with the MAGA group because I know there's some difference. There's some
Mhm.
Republicans against MAGA. So, yeah, I think it's bullshit as far as the, you know, as far as Governor Abbott threatening to arrest the lawmakers that left. I don't think they can actually do that because I can only do that within the state of Texas, and they left. Can they
Mhm.
if they come back? I don't know. I think they are they know they haven't done anything illegal, so they're kind of just like, what are you gonna do? Just like drag us back to Texas against our will and make us vote, you know?
Yeah, and what I believe, so he issued civil warrants and he's trying to have them arrested over that. But from what I did do research on, is that civil warrants are more akin to like a traffic ticket. You know, it's not like a criminal offense. It's more of a, you know, so they're definitely manipulating the fact that a law was passed recently saying that, you know, you could issue a civil warrant for this type of thing. So like if a senator or a group of senators or politicians or whatever that are supposed to be voting decide to protest and walk away and stop, you know, legislation from moving forward, then yes, you could issue a civil warrant to try and push that. But it's not supposed to be an actual arrest. It's supposed to be more of like, hey, you can get fined. You know, if you want to play games, you can get fined, right? So this is definitely being pushed way past its limits and its intentions. But it just feels like I can't remember if I sent this video to you or you sent it to me, but I saw it on TikTok and it was some news station and they were talking to one of the GOP senators that are involved in this, and they're asking them, you know, like, why do you want to change the districting, you know, the districting map? Like, you know, they're looking for like, well, our constituents are saying this, that they feel like they're unheard, or like that they feel like it's unfair. No, the guy was like, because we can, like, just straight face, because we can, and we want to win. Like, that's literally what he tells the news reporter. And it's like, that's the world we're in right now, which is ridiculous. Like, we have politicians in seats that aren't trying to do what's right for their constituents. They aren't trying to do what's right for their state. They're doing what's right for them, and that is wrong. I would say the same thing about Democrats. If you're only doing things to push your career forward, or you're only doing things to push your party forward, and you are ignoring what the people are asking for and what the people need, that is wrong. So yeah, this is just, you know, Texas is the first one, and I believe there's other states now that are trying to bend the knee to Trump and are also talking about doing the same thing. So, I mean, when it comes down to it, we're just falling faster and faster into an authoritative regime and towards fascism. But it's just this fighting that is pushing us further away, dividing us more, and we're getting so far away from what our forefathers wanted when they came here and put together a constitution. They wanted everyone to feel equal. They wanted there to be, you know, everyone to feel heard, and there to be a consensus, where it's like, now it's just, nope, we're going to do what we want to do because that's going to help us win. We're going to cheat. And the fact that you're not seeing people, or at least I'm not seeing people from that side being like, yeah, this is wrong, you know, is a little concerning.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Everyone's just so about their party right now. Even Democrats guilty, you know, and it's disheartening because, again, like you mentioned, it should be about the people. And I just don't, it's been a long time, I feel like, since it's really about the people. And that's why we're all struggling. So, yeah, I think it's a bunch of immature bullshit happening. And I know that a big part of it is because Trump's approval rating is dropping due to the Epstein situation. His base is upset with him as well. So he knows, like, if his base is turning on him, like, of course, they're worried about what's going to happen with midterms. And, of course, you know, I mean, I wish midterms were like tomorrow. I feel like, because if we could, you know, get more, if we could, you know, win more seats and take back some power in Congress, it would be helpful. But yeah, it's rough. There's not a lot of breaks and checks and balances happening right now. I mean, the checks and balances are hanging on by a thread, but they're definitely kind of like being pushed to the max, and it's kind of nerve-wracking, not gonna lie.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. Speaking of power and fascism, I can't talk.
Authorifascism.
Dictators and shit. So Trump, Putin, you know, they're planning a summit in Alaska, and should I go over kind of a little bit about what's going to be happening there? All right, so Trump announced a summit with Putin on August 15th, 2025, in Alaska to push a Ukraine ceasefire following his envoy Steve Witkoff's Moscow talks on August 6th. Trump's floating land swaps, but Zelensky's firm no territory losses. His 24-hour peace promise is 200 plus days overdue, and Putin's open to talks, but not budging on demands. So essentially, Zelensky is like, no, we don't, no peace unless we keep all of our land. And yeah, it's still no peace after 200 plus days of Trump in office, after he said he'd stop the war day one. I'm like, cool story, dude.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
Yeah. I think, I mean, if anything, this is just going to be some backhand deals that are happening. I wouldn't be surprised if, I mean, we're looking at kind of like what happened with, Trump and Israel, where like, there wasn't like any like anti-Israel thing, but there definitely wasn't like, we're going to help you, attack Gaza now. And Trump quickly bended and is now, we've helped, attack people in Gaza. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same situation. He worked some deal with Putin, and next thing you know, it's going to be, well, if Zelensky's not going to, give peace, then we'll have no choice than to jump in and help force peace, type situation. But I don't know. You've got two people who care more about their name, their brand,
power
than they care about actual human people.
Yes.
I mean, you've got Putin, who has forced people who didn't want to be in a war and has forced people to their deaths that were his own citizens, and I really have to hand it to Zelensky, because it would be so easy to just say, take it, we give up, but he's really sticking to their guns, which like that is their land, that is, so yeah. I mean, I've been wanting this to end since it started. I don't think anyone who is a decent human being wants to see people killing each other. So I mean, if Trump can somehow broker a deal where it ends, that would be great. Even if that happens, I don't think it's going to be without some major sacrifices or some, big threats.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the most like confusing thing, or just hypocritical thing, is the fact that, Trump's like, we're tired of giving Ukraine money, America first, we shouldn't be aiding other people's wars, and they need to figure it out on their own. And then here we are helping Israel with absolutely everything, no questions asked. We're just like, yeah, we're in. And I know, someone who grew up religious, Christian, it was always taught to us that you stand with Israel no matter what, because it's God's people, and any country that goes against Israel is going to be doomed by God. Essentially, he's going to strike them down and you'll be fucked. So I think there's, part of the whole, that religious situation going on, which is one reason why we always stand with Israel. But I think also they hold a lot of power. Not to get conspiracy theorist, but that's one of the ex-MAGA, the base, they're very upset about the Israel situation, saying that like Israel owns the US. And it fucking feels like it at this point, with everything that's going on. And I guess that kind of goes into the
our
next
topic.
Yeah, you want to hit that one in?
Yeah. Israeli strikes killed 80 plus Palestinians at an aid distribution sites this week, with the UN warning of famine and calling attacks an affront to humanity. Aid access is near zero, with airdrops by France and UAE failing to meet needs. Trump's 142 billion U.S. Saudi arms deal and sanctions on the Palestinian Authority for ICC cases add tension. X is raging with calls of genocide and survivor stories, while some defend Israel's security needs. When it comes down to it, and you're seeing what's happening, this isn't Israeli having security needs. They're not being attacked. Like, I get Hamas, like that is a terrorist group, and they did an absolutely horrific thing in October of last year, right?
Yeah, October 7th, I believe.
October 7th, yeah. I don't think anyone is defending Hamas. But the people of Gaza, the Palestinians, they're not Hamas. Hamas is its own individual thing. So for anyone to be using that as an excuse to slaughter people, and not just adults, we are seeing reports from people, from U.S. soldiers who are reporting back that they have witnessed Israeli soldiers, or I don't know if they're official Israeli soldiers, I can't remember what the name is, but they're like a militia, but they are supported by the government, shooting down children at these aid sites. It is absolutely horrific, horrendous, disgusting behavior, and I don't care what your reasoning is, that is genocide. And especially from the Israeli people who face the genocide themselves, to be doing the same thing and be so callous about it.
Yeah.
I've seen videos of this Israeli woman who was so callous, and when talking about how they were just going to come over to Gaza and they're just going to start taking land, and she doesn't care about kids being killed. She doesn't care about adults being killed because of what Hamas did, because it's their land. These people who, in my opinion, these people who are acting this way have lost their souls. There is no humanity. To see the photos of children who are starving, their ribs are sticking out, can't get aid, to not have any emotional sympathy for that just shows the type of person you are. If you look at that and you're like, well, they deserve it, you are a horrible person. So it breaks my heart. We've seen people who have tried to go over and give just food and aid. I believe Greta Thunberg and some other people took a boat over and tried to just give some aid, and they were arrested on site. Some people are still, I think, imprisoned. But yeah, there's, like I said, I was watching a video where this U.S. soldier was talking about, them defending, not defending, but they're at a aid site, and their job is just to, be there and make sure that, there's no fighting over the food. And he's watching kids picking up pieces of rice out of the dirt because that's all that's left, and then they got mowed down by the Israeli forces as they were leaving an aid site. So yeah, to be in the year 2025 and this is how we are treating people is just absolutely devastating. You would think that we would have learned more from World War One and World War Two, and it is absolutely sickening to be part of a country that is supporting that.
Yeah. It's just insane. No wonder, if aliens are coming to destroy us, because we're fucking assholes.
Yeah.
It's like, come save us from ourselves, It's just, you would think we'd be more evolved by now.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems very Stone Age. It's like our brains about power and money and all that just are still so far behind evolution that we just still turn to violence to get what we want. And I'm just like, we're not past this. This is fucking nutty. Yeah, reality is shitty. So I agree with everything you say there. I do want to move on to the tariff situation.
Yeah, so this last week, Trump slapped 30% tariffs on EU and Mexico imports, with 50% threats on Brazil for buying Russian oil. And that was effective August 7th. China retaliated with 84% tariffs, and analysts warn of price hikes and a global recession. I mean, we all knew this was coming. When Trump was running again and he was talking about all the tariffs he was going to put, and you talked about, you would hear mad people being like, that's finally going to bring prices down and things are going to be so much greater for them. We're going to make them pay for shit. It's like, they don't pay for shit. We pay for the tariffs. Don't understand. And, that could just be because I did work in manufacturing for a little bit. I was a shipping manager, so I dealt with that. I had to do imports. And when Trump was in term last time, it really fucked over the business I was in because of the amount of costs that we had to pay for those import fees. So yeah, I mean, I believe it was, I can't remember what the other company was, but I know Ford just released that. I believe last year they had like almost $1 billion in profits or something like that, and this year so far they're like basically in the negative because of all the tariffs. Like they've got no profit.
Yeah.
So you look at like a powerhouse like Ford and the fact that they're fucked, because of this. Everything else, all our fruits and vegetables that we get imported, no more avocados from Mexico, and our coffee, pineapple, whatever that we can't grow here in mass. That's all gonna spike up. And even things as like cars are already super expensive, and that's just gonna jack up even more. To build a house is gonna be more expensive because lumber from Canada is gonna cost more. It's just like none of this helps the American people. No. None of this helps the American people. And so it's scary. I still hear people talking about like, oh, these tariffs are gonna help, or like we're only in a recession because of this and this. It's like, no, it's because of the fucking tariffs. He started a trade war. That's not something that you play around with. If you're starting a trade war, it's gonna affect us. So yeah, I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, no, 1,000% agree. It's only going to be impacting the American people, but also I remember when he was running and saying that tariffs will replace, taxes. We won't have to pay taxes anymore if we have tariffs, and that was complete, utter fucking bullshit. I mean, we knew it was going to be bullshit because it's like, yeah, whatever, dude. But I think his base actually kind of believed that. Oh, yeah. But whatever happened to that? We're still paying fucking taxes just like we always have been. Americans are just, bleeding out more as far as financial stuff goes. Like buying anything is insanely expensive. And I just am like, how was this supposed to help at this? Like, who's getting more money in their pockets? Just, people in power. No, nothing is trickling down to the fucking American people, and trickle down economics obviously don't work because people don't trickle it down. They just hold on to it. Even if they can't spend all the money in their bank account in their lifetime, it doesn't matter. They hold on to it. And and of course, we've got not only the tariffs, but now he's like, oh yeah, we're building a $200 million add-on to the White House, and so we're going to be paying like our taxpayer dollars going to that. I know he said like, oh, I'm footing the bill, and it's just like, okay, yeah, I'm sure you are. Yeah, but like I can only think if he builds this fucking golden ballroom, like when I think of some symbolic thing happening, I almost think of at some point all this hopefully will be over, and I just imagine bulldozing that ballroom connected to the White House as if it's like the Berlin Wall, just being like, fuck yeah, that time in history is over. We're getting rid of this memory and we're moving forward, but we're gonna have a long time until any of that occurs. We're just getting started, unfortunately. If we're paying attention to, history and how everything starts, we're just getting started, and it's not fun to be here.
Nope, this is not the timeline I want to be in for sure. No, it's it's the same thing as last time he ran, when he his whole campaign was on building a wall for from Mexico, and that they were going to pay everything, and Mexico didn't pay it. Yeah, we the taxpayers paid it.
That sounds mild in comparison to what is happening right now. Do you remember, like, that was the biggest issue we were having? I mean, mostly. But now it's just chaos and just, there's so many things going on that we're just like, everything is a bad idea. Like, everything is a wall. Like, everything is worse than the wall. And it's just, we can just sit and do what we can and wait and hope for the best, but goddamn. So along with, tariffs and all that bullshit, and Americans just getting poorer and poorer as the rich people get richer and richer. Speaking of rich people, so Epstein updates. So currently, the DOJ is still withholding the Epstein files logbooks, videos, and with Trump backtracking on his release promise, citing privacy. I saw a clip of him being like, we don't want people to get hurt, and it's like, we want pedophiles to get hurt, motherfucker. And it just doesn't make any sense. And he keeps putting out bullshit, just expecting his base to accept it because maybe previously they would. But his base has actually been so adamant about this issue specifically. They're kind of like, no, we're not going to take the bait on this one. And they're still pressing him on it, which props, like, good, keep going. Because he's protecting himself and other people. So currently, Ghislaine Maxwell's deposition got pushed to August 15th. So that's coming up a bit, probably by the time this gets released. Yeah. And her transfer to the Texas prison, the pardon rumors keep just escalating. And only 4% of Americans apparently support a pardon. And I'm surprised it's even 4%. She does not deserve a pardon. She was just as involved as Epstein, just as guilty as Epstein. And to pardon a sex trafficker, a pedophile, someone who has harmed a lot of young women, just to give a bullshit story to not incriminate Trump. I hope that his base is smart enough to see what's happening. I know there's going to be a lot of denial. No one wants to see something in a person that they're trying to, it's almost like people are protecting themselves from feeling like they were fooled. And I know that's an awful feeling to, if having to question your own ideology and feeling kind of dumb, like you were fooled into things. It's a very uncomfortable feeling, but unfortunately it's necessary to address that. And you're worse off if you stay in the dark and keep defending your ideology or your previous beliefs. It's just not a good thing to just hold on beliefs just to hold on to them. But cult, right? So my belief is still that he's trying to get her to speak. There's the her deposition, right? What I'm thinking is they're going to have this meeting with her. She's going to talk, and it's not going to be, to Congress in a place where, lying is literally illegal. So if they have these talks outside of, Congress and all that stuff, she could give whatever story she wants and not be penalized for it if they find out it's not true. And they're just going to hope that his base takes that and, he doesn't have to release the files. He doesn't have to have her testify in front of Congress or whatever. And then, I know she's wanting, clemency or whatever in exchange. And I just feel like behind the scenes they're working out this deal of like, hey, you can give these certain names, cough Bill Clinton, cough and Bill Gates or whoever, all these fucking Bills, man. Don't name your child Bill from here on out, guys. Not gonna be a good one. So I have a feeling they're probably gonna give her like this approved list of names to give out and talk about, and basically tell her to say she never saw Trump do anything inappropriate. And I think she's already said something along those lines. And I think he's just searching for what his base will be happy with. He's basically breadcrumbing people, kind of seeing what the result is and moving along with that, while trying to also say that it's a hoax and it doesn't matter and there's more important things to worry about. And it's like, I don't know that there's more important things to worry about outside of like a massive sex trafficking ring for children in the US and other countries. There's actually this fitness guy, Jordan Site. He had a ex-CIA agent on his podcast, and he asked her about some of the Epstein stuff, and she basically was like, I don't think that Epstein was, because there's a rumor he was a secret agent for Israel, like he's connected to Israel. She's like, I don't think he was like an agent, but I do think that he has a lot of dirt on a lot of powerful people. He knows a lot of things, and he could, cause a lot of damage, and that explains why no one thinks he killed himself, not even the people close to him. There, for all we know, there was some sort of plan set in place, right? If X happens, this is what we do. all like the powerful people involved being like, okay, well, Epstein needs to die. This is what we're gonna do. Uh, just because he holds so much information that it could cause some massive world disruption. And I think that's why they don't want to release it either, because it's not just the US that's involved. It's other countries as well.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think even, even if it was for the right intentions, like even if, we knew 100% that Trump wasn't involved with Jeffrey Epstein, and he was just trying, the DOJ was just trying to, get the names. I don't think a pardon for Ghislaine is appropriate in any way for what she's done.
No.
I could definitely see
Definitely
being like,
not.
hey,
I think 20 years isn't even enough for the sentence that she already has. So
that should be life.
Yeah. Like, think of, I always fucking forget his name. The Nexium guy. He got life in prison for what he did. And
And that was with adults.
Yes. Well, it was also younger that they discovered. But it wasn't even as big, like Epstein, it was a massive sex trafficking situation happening. And, she is only getting 20 years and she was just as involved, so just as guilty. So for what's his face to get life and her to just get 20 years, and now she's been moved to a cushy little prison in Texas and potentially could be pardoned. And Trump was talking about pardoning Diddy because he looks at loyalty over anything. If anyone has been loyal to him, he will do anything for them if they have been loyal. And I think he's like, I've always had a good relationship with Diddy. We've been close, and he's always been, loyal to him essentially. And so he's like, he always says, I can pardon them, have the ability. And it's just like, why would you pardon these motherfuckers if you're not involved yourself? You're not an awful person yourself. So it's just like, I wish his base would wake up to be like, no good person would pardon either of these people.
Yeah.
No good person would hold on to these files and just let this shit continue, because it's still happening. Epstein was one guy in a huge trafficking ring. Maybe he started it, but for sure, like, someone's still running something,
Oh yeah.
And maybe it's Trump. I don't know, but yeah, it's not.
Here.
What was that?
I said you didn't hear it here.
Man.
Yeah, no, it's just absolutely disgusting. I don't even know what else to say on it. It's Trump's gross, Epstein's gross, Ghislaine is gross. We're ran by people who are just gross people. I mean, you even look at what's his fucking name? That the politician, he was a Republican senator, Matt Gaetz. He also like has accusations of hooking up with underage girls, and how far he got away with shit, and he hasn't faced anything.
Can you imagine?
It just sucks.
So he stepped down because of all that, but can you imagine if he didn't? How much more that would fall on Trump? Because I think he knew that there was just too much, and if he didn't step down or like pull out from the nomination, that especially with all this coming in afterwards, it would just look so much worse. Be like, Trump literally surrounded himself by pedophiles, like literally. So that's obviously still developing. It's gonna be a developing story for a while, especially with the 15th, as we have the deposition situation happening, if it happens. So we'll just kind of sit tight and see how it all unfolds. So
I think probably should jump into some more positive stuff. Cody, what have you been watching this week?
So randomly did start watching another Epstein documentary that's on Amazon Prime. It's called Who Killed Epstein, and we're only into the first episode. It was created in 2020, so it's on the older side. But sometimes when you watch older stuff, it kind of helps you piece little things together still. even if,
Mhm.
that information is a little older, and gives you a better idea of the whole picture of what's happening right now. So that's been pretty interesting. We also have been watching Chef's Table just because, obviously I like to cook. I've watched the first season. Um, and there's multiple seasons now, so we kind of picked it up again. We're watching it from the start because Des has never watched it, but the videography is amazing. You might like it just for that. It's beautiful, and the way that they present and film the food and the cooking, and the way that they tell the stories of these chefs, and it's really interesting, and you learn a lot because they also it teaches you not just about food but about where it's grown, how it's grown, and culture and stuff like that. So it's fun. And then the last thing is this new Netflix documentary called Critical Between Life and Death, and it takes place in UK and in London at their major trauma center. And showcasing people who are injured, and they kind of follow their story through first coming into the hospital and how they do and progress through being treated for these traumatic injuries. And
Mhm.
it's interesting to see how the medical system works in the UK. They do great jobs for trauma and stuff like that. And we were laughing last night while we were watching it. There's this guy who broke his leg in a motorcycle accident, and we're like, they're so polite even when they're in pain, because the guy was like thanking the paramedics
Mhm.
as they were rolling away, and he's like, thanks mate so much, you helped me so much, and he goes, high five. And like the paramedics like, oh, can you move your arm like that? And he's like, so they high five. It's like, oh my god, their accents make them sound so polite even in traumatic scenarios. But yeah, it's been good. It's been interesting. How about you?
TV wise, still we're on a roll with Dawson's Creek. We're midway through season 3. I don't think we've watched any other TV this last week or movies. TikTok, though, my TikTok has been flooded with this whole crazy story. I don't know. You're not on TikTok, so you might not have heard anything of it, but there's this woman who did like an 80-part series on TikTok about how her therapist is in love with her, and like it's fucking crazy. So like like the way it started out, people were like, this guy probably needs to like lose his license and like all this stuff, like that's completely inappropriate. And then the further you get into it, you're like, oh no, like he's not into her. She's like created this whole situation in her head and like believes that she's like he's in love with her. And like for example, I think one of the things that she's talking about is how like she was like, well, I asked him if I could call him by his first name, and so like he let me use his first name instead of his last name, so like obviously he was into me. And like then I started talking about like my sex life more and more because I knew he would like it. And I'm like, well,
God.
yeah, he's a therapist, he has to listen to what you have to say. It doesn't mean he likes listening to it. And then there was like another part where she was like, so the way his office is like there's his desk, and then there's like the normal seat that a patient would sit on, but then there's like a seat, like a less comfortable chair that's closer to him. And I chose to sit in the less comfortable chair so I could be sitting next to him for our session. And then the next time I came in, he like changed all the furniture so there was no seat next to him. Like that's an obvious sign like he doesn't want you near him, like he's uncomfortable, like and yeah, so like I'll try and find like a video of someone like breaking down the whole thing and send it to you, because you would find it quite interesting. But like it's this whole series of like this lady who's like obviously manic and like crashing out. And the thing that really takes the turn is she uses AI as an alternative like therapist, and this AI is like, you are completely valid in your thoughts and your feelings and everything you're doing. And she named the AI Henry. And so like she would like go to Henry and like tell her what like all the people on TikTok are like saying, and like how she's like crazy and none of this is real. And then Henry would be like, no, it's completely real, and like this is why, and you're just being like systemically like oppressed because of this. And then like her apparently she's a yoga teacher, and she like spent a whole yoga class like telling her students about like all the shit with her therapist, and like the yoga studio found out and like fired her because of it, because it was on TikTok. And then she went to Henry and was like, they fired me, and Henry was like, well, that's because they're systemically oppressing you, and you like just totally like feeding into what she's saying. And it got to the point where the AI just ghosted her, and now and like I think probably either AI or the programmers like because of she's posting all of this stuff and how it's responding, they were like, this is gonna get us in trouble, and like just deactivated it, or the AI just realized that it's getting itself in trouble, and so it won't respond to her anymore. And so then she started going to another AI and talking to it, and now the AI is like, you're an oracle. Like that's what it's referring her as, is like an oracle. It's
Wow.
just it's so insane, but like yeah, it's
So this
bad.
is a TikTok series, or is it on something else besides TikTok?
It might be on other things, but the woman is posting like on TikTok,
Okay.
and she's doing like lives every day for like hours at a time, just like
Holy
just
shit.
talking. Yeah, definitely like losing it. Definitely needs like mental health services, but
Yeah.
in probably a facility, because she's got some delusions going on. But she like doxed her like the psychiatrist, so like got his like address and like name, maybe not his name, but people figure out who he was. So luckily people have realized that she's wrong, and like he wasn't manipulating her, but like he could have like faced, charges. He could have lost his license, because it is, a she said he said thing. But yeah, it's scary. Like I don't think I don't think the psychiatrist has responded to any of it that I know of. But I really hope he gets a restraining order, because it is at the level to where like if she finds out where he lives, like I could see her like showing up and like
Oh, 100%.
single white female, whatever, So it's scary for sure.
The funny part is, it's probably more common than we even hear about, but because of the AI situation, it makes it so much worse, because it actually like validates people's delusions, and it just makes things so much more magnified. And I've seen so many more reels and articles and stuff warning about the dangers of using AI as a therapist as a result, I think, of what you're describing, even though I wasn't sure of like the source of where that was coming from. But I've been seeing it so much about it feeding into people's delusions, and the how problematic it can become. Yeah, it's true. It's shitty, because like it can also be very helpful. Like I won't lie, I couldn't afford to do ERP therapy anymore for OCD, and it's really helpful in that it can help work as an ERP therapist. But that's not like feeding delusions. It's like giving you exposure assignments, or like telling you how to ground yourself and that sort of thing. It's not like, here's like, I wasn't giving it scenarios and having it validate me. So you can use it, for good in the mental health arena.
But also, AI is all about prompting. So if you don't prompt your AI in the right way to where you want it to not think individually, but like AI is going to give back what you put into it. So if you're just like, I want you to be my therapist and I want you to make, whatever, like it's going to tell you what you want to hear. But if you prompt it right and you're like, I want you to challenge me, I want you to be, middle of the road or whatever, like it can be a helpful tool. It just it's not for everyone if you don't prompt it right. And if you also if you are in suffering from more severe mental illness, like BPD or schizophrenia or something like that, where it might be harder for you to distinguish reality or whatever. If you aren't in the mind space of like, this is AI, this isn't a human, I have to take it with a grain of salt, or whatever, it can push you into a psychosis. So I don't think that using AI is 100% bad or 100% good. It's just the way you use it. You know?
100%. And that goes for anything new that comes around. We said the same thing about social media. It's about how you use it. You have to control your intake and just learn how to keep it safe, keep it as a tool that works for you and not against you. Same thing
Yeah.
with AI. And you also, just like social media, you don't want to be on social media too much. You got to live your real life. You don't want to use AI too much because your brain forgets how to fucking think for itself. So just like with diet and food, everything in moderation, folks.
Yep. Yep.
So, yeah. Speaking of moderation, this episode is very long.
Oh yeah. Well, then I think on that, I think this is a good time to call it. Next week it's a big week. Obviously, there's going to be the summit between Putin and Trump, as well as, unless it gets pushed back, we have Ghislaine's testimony next week. Technically it'll be the week after by the time we post it, but we'll have a lot of coverage and updating everyone on what's going on, and hopefully Toby or Carly, whoever's barking, hopefully it'll be a not as horrible as it could go situation. So we will follow up and doom scroll together.
Yep. All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening. And Toby says goodbye, and I say goodbye. Peace out.